he is. Didn't take long. First fish on the little limit out compact swim jig. White with a menace. That was a cool bite. I saw that fish come flying after it. There we go. A decent fish. Post spawn. Beat up a little bit. There we go. Nice fish. Look at that tail. Definitely post spawn. There he is. That's a good fish. That's a good fish. Oh yeah. Nice fish. A little shad spawn going on right here, guys. Yeah, he got off. That's okay. A little bluegill or shad spawn going on right here. I don't know. Saw a bunch of commotion up on the surface. That was a good fish. Jumped off. What's up, folks? I'm out here on Cedar Lake and it is beautiful. It's super windy out here. We had a full moon, bluebird skies. Water temps are like 62 degrees. I'm back here kind of in the east arm, back around the second island in that area. I'm just kind of poking around in some of these coves and looking. I'm seeing a few beds. I had a good morning on a swim jig. Caught several fish on a swim jig, you know, low light conditions. If I'd have got out here a little bit earlier, I think I would have been able to really capitalize on that bite. I've been throwing a frog, have not got bit on that yet. Been you know, flipping some soft plastics around. Had a couple bites on that. So I'm just playing around. It's been a while since I've been out here. I'm gonna make a run, try to just kind of key on the backs of some of these pockets to see if there's some fish on beds and stuff. So it's good to be out here though. Fish hammered it. Go, swim jig. Swim jig bites good this morning. Just throwing a little 3/8 ounce limit out compact swim jig. Chartreuse shiner. Nothing big. Well, I had one good one hooked up all ago, but it's fun. There we go. There we go. Still getting a swim jig bite. Alright. Swim jig. It's about the only thing I can get bit on. I've been flipping a little bit. I'm not seeing as many beds as I was hoping I would see. I'm still going to try several more pockets, but decent fish. Still looking for a big one. There we go. Fish are out deeper. About the only thing I can get bit on is this swim jig. The old swim jig fish. It's about all I can get bit on, folks. Okay, it's kind of a midday report. It's really tough out here. It's full moon. Fish should be up on beds, and I've seen like 3 or 4 up on beds, but they're real skittish. I saw a couple 3.5, 4 pound fish, but they won't commit. They're not locked on. You know, they'll swim off and I wait for them. They'll come back, and as soon as I pitch in there, pass it and pull it in, they take off. So maybe that'll change later on this afternoon. And I've been running wind. The only thing I can get bit on is this swim jig right now. I might slow down a little bit and throw a worm. I threw a Cinco, threw a quiver. Just hasn't been happening. It's, you know, we had several good rainy days prior to this, and I know the fish were feeding based on the reports. So this kind of might be one of those little slack days, but I'm not going to give up. Keep bouncing around. I'm thinking about getting out on some points and dragging a jig, maybe throwing a crankbait. We'll see what happens. Let me talk to you a little bit about a couple of baits that were working. You know, I tried a bunch of different stuff. I threw a frog, I threw a buzz toad, I threw a jerk bait, crankbait, drug some plastics around. But, you know, I started out the morning with that white swim jig, and I got some bites right away. But I was really focused on trying to find some bedding fish because it was a full moon phase, and I just hadn't had a chance to really get on some bedding fish other than Table Rock, but not here locally in Southern Illinois. And I just couldn't find the amount of beds. The fish were really, really spooky. Like I said earlier, I saw a couple beds, but the fish just, they weren't locked on. There one particular fish was about 4 pounds, and she saw me and she spooked, but she would circle back around and come back in about 20 seconds, and I'd pitch in there, and as soon as my bait would hit the water, she'd shoot out. So what I did was flipped in there, and I got the bait to where I could see it on the bed. I just eased off and just pushed my button and got slack, and I waited for her to come back, and as soon as she came back, she got close to the bait, and I just barely shook it, and she just shot off. So it wasn't happening. They weren't locked on, and I looked in probably 5 or 6 different areas that I know they spawn in. Just wasn't going on. I really only found beds in one area, and I even took some time to drag soft plastics like a Cinco and a quiver and a beaver through those areas, just thinking that I would run across the beds, but just wasn't going on. So I went back to that swim jig, and I was covering water with that swim jig, you know, and they were in those little grass lanes, and it was all about just a little bit of wind, not out in the heavy wind, because the wind was blowing. It was blowing like 20-30 miles an hour. But they wanted a little bit of wind to break up that water, at least the areas that I caught the fish, but not full wind. So I was just kind of in the areas where they would spawn, but kind of covering some water. So I was throwing, let me show you the best bait that I was throwing today. It's a 3/8 ounce swim jig in the chartreuse shiner color, and I went with 3/8. A lot of times I throw a quarter up shallow, but I just thought that I needed to be a little bit deeper, and I kind of thought that there was, I don't know, maybe it's because I just got done watching the Bassmasters Elite on Lake Fork, but I was thinking shad spawn, and I did see a little bit of something. I'm not really sure, but anyway, this is what I was throwing. This is what I caught most of my fish on. This is the Cumberland Pro Limit Out Compact swim jig, and I had a Rage Menace, which is a great swim jig trailer. A lot of times I go with a Rage Crawl or the Menace or a little swim bait, and this comes through grass really good. You know, the problem with these lakes right now that have grass in them is there's like an algae that grows on a lot of this grass, and anytime you bump a bait up against it, you get that gummy stuff on there. And of the 3 baits that I normally throw around grass, the bladed jig, the spinner bait, and the swim jig, this one does the best in that kind of environment. It seems to get a lot less of that stuff, and you can just really pinch it. You know, a spinner bait has that swivel, and you get that grass or that algae in the swivel, and it takes a little bit more time. And then the chatterbait has that snap in the blade, and you know, it just requires a little more maintenance. But the swim jig is, you know, you just pinch it off and you're good to go. This thing does a pretty good job of deflecting that stuff. But caught several decent fish on this. And you know, after a while, I thought, well, I'm going to go out, slide out on some of these little secondary points and maybe fish some little pieces of brush that I know of. And I got some bites on the Zoom Mag 2 worm in plum apple. And you know, this is a 9-inch worm. I like to throw the old monsters a lot, but I think right now it seems like around the spawn, the fish still like a little bit smaller profile, and as the water warms up even more, they'll get on that big worm. And I didn't try the big worm. I probably could have got some bites on it, but I just know from past experience that this, like a 9-inch size worm, is a really good size worm to fish around the spawn. Plum apple, plum, watermelon candy, something like that is just a good color. It's a good all-around color. Something about plum, it just, I got a lot of confidence in it. Caught a lot of fish on the plum, but I was throwing that on with just a 4-aught hook and a 1/4 ounce weight, 15-pound test. And I probably I should have bumped up to probably 3/8 ounce weight because the wind was blowing. But I was just, honestly, I was just kind of too lazy and I just didn't do it. I just kept going with it. And my swim jig rod is just a 7-foot medium heavy smoke rod. It's a great all around rod. And I throw that swim jig on 15-pound fluorocarbon. It's always worked for me. So that's basically what was going on. You know, I went over there with the mindset of doing one thing, and I ended up just kind of fishing the conditions and just going with what was working. And I stayed main lake for the most part. I sampled the creeks and stuff, but there was a lot of other boats in there. So most of these fish were just main lake, little short pockets and backs of coves and things like that. Good bite. There we go. Decent fish. Finally got a bite on something besides a swim jig. Just a worm. I had a feeling some of these fish are pulled off. There we go. Decent fish. Little worm. Little Mag 2. Zoom. All right. All right, man. There he is. Quality fish on the worm. Boy, it's windy out here. Woo! There he is. Got him. fish. Little fish. Little bitty guy. Hello, my name is Smarty. Need a bigger worm, I guess. One thing I noticed that was going on was there was a mayfly hatch, those really dark mayflies, and I don't know if that had something to do with the fish being a little bit finicky. Sometimes around a mayfly hatch they get keyed in on them, but I wasn't seeing a lot of topwater activity, so I'm not sure that was the case. Now this one fish that I did see, which was a beast, she was in the 6-pound range. I was just kind of going down the bank and I saw something finning probably 50 yards in the grass, and I just thought it was a carp. This is about the time of the year when they start moving up and they start spawning and things get real crazy and you see a lot of tail action and stuff like that. But as I got closer, I realized it was a bass, and she was kind of laying, she was kind of nose down with the tail up, and then she'd kind of come up and lay on her side and stuff, and then she'd right herself, and then her dorsal fin would kind of be up in the air. And I got within like 10 feet of her, and I pitched a bait in there. I made a bad, I splashed her basically, but she wasn't interested anyway, and she kind of just eased on off, and I kept looking back waiting for her to show herself again, but it never did. And I pulled up on that spot where she was at and looked down. There was no bed, so I don't know if she was just wore out from spawning, or maybe there was a tournament the day before and somebody had caught her and released her and she hadn't quite, you know, gained her equilibrium and did what she needed to do to recuperate. But I thought that was interesting. That was a really good solid fish that I saw. There he is. Oh God, that's a good fish. Fish crushed it. Chunk. Strong fish. There we go. There we go. A decent swim jig fish right there. A little compact, limit out compact swim jig. Let's let this guy go. Pretty decent fish. Tough day. Alrighty then. Be that way. That's gonna wrap it up, folks. It was a little bit tougher out here than I anticipated. I saw a few spawning fish. In fact, I just saw about a 6-pounder over there rolled up on the side. I don't know if it was spawning or if it was, you know, left over from a tournament or something, but it did swim off. I pitched at it a couple times, but that's kind of what I was seeing. You know, I seen probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 that were in that 3.5 to 4-pound range, and they just were not locked on. They would just keep moving on. And just seeing a few beds here and there. The best bite was that swim jig earlier, and then I switched to just a 9-inch worm in a plum apple color, and I was getting some bites on that. The wind was blowing really, really hard. It's starting to die down a little bit, but it was hard to find an area out of the wind for most of the day. Water is, I saw 60 this morning, and I got 64 right now back in one of these pockets. And it's anywhere from a foot to about 3 foot of visibility. If you run up to the mid-lake, it's, you know, about 3 foot, but it's pretty stained. I didn't go all the way back in the creeks, and the gnats are horrible right now. The gnats are starting to come out. You can see them flying all around me. It's gonna be one of those natty years, but fun day. You know, I caught some fish, had a good time. Beautiful weather. I mean, it's like almost 80 degrees out here. Just a nice day. So hey, give me a thumbs up if you appreciate the content, and please subscribe to the channel. That's all I got for you. Until next time.